All right, everybody. So my name's Pete McCormick. This is my professional learning community presentation on the question answer relationship strategy, or QAR. I'm going to be exploring how it supports literacy instruction, especially for students with disabilities, and how we can apply it across different classrooms and content areas. So I'm really excited you guys are here with me today on this. To break down our agenda a little bit, we're going to be covering and defining what QAR is. We're going to walk through its 4 types of questions and look at why the strategy works, especially for diverse learners, and then dive into classroom applications and future research needs. So first, what is QAR? QAR, it's a research-based reading strategy that helps students understand where answers to questions come from. It was introduced to build metacognitive skills around comprehension, and it gives students a structure for deciding, is the answer right in the text, or do I have to think beyond the text that I'm reading? And it's particularly helpful for struggling readers who often get overwhelmed by text or don't know how to approach questions strategically. And I think that this is a tool that would be very helpful in high school settings. And I think we actually use it more often than we know. And that's why I was drawn to it. So QAR is set up into 2 broad categories. The framework basically breaks everything into whether the answer is in the book, as in right there, or you can think about it and search for the answer, or if it's in my head, if it's something kind of between the author and the reader, or something that you have to work on your own. Sometimes those get called critical thinking skills. So when we're talking about in the book, the answers are going to be text-based, as like right there or think and search, or if it's in your head, the answers might require you to infer information or make a personal connection to the text that you're reading. So teachers are going to model each question type, and students are going to gradually learn how to identify where the answer is independently. And it's really going to help build up those essential self-monitoring skills that some of our students struggle with. So first we have the right there answers. And right there means that the answer rather, is verbatim in the text. It's often a single sentence that you can find within a text. You're going to be looking at keywords in the question and trying to find those keywords sometimes directly in the text. It's a great starting point for students because they just need to kind of scan and locate, which is really helpful for chunking bigger readings or readings that they think are bigger, your students. So like, for example, what did Goldilocks do with the little bear's porridge? Would be an example of a right there question. That answer can be lifted directly from the text according to our WJ strategies that we were using. Then we have think and search. So think and search questions are going to also use text-based answers, but you kind of have to pull them together from different places. So you might be scanning multiple sentences and synthesizing an answer based on coming from different paths of the actual reading that you're doing here. So sometimes this is going to include summarization or synthesizing or connecting ideas. And it's going to help develop a deeper reading habits like comparing your problem solving skills and interpreting the structure of a reading. So for instance, as an example, what were the ways that Rachel used her prize money to help children? So that might have multiple answers. Maybe Rachel used the prize money to get the kids a couple snacks. Maybe she also used the prize money to donate to a local charity. So we're talking about synthesizing an answer by comparing multiple points of the reading for our student. And this is going to really kind of support literal comprehension. It's also really going to help us get deeper reading habits, which is going to help our students out on those standardized tests. The next one is kind of an interesting one. It's called the author and you answers. And the answer is not explicitly in the text, but it relies on the text. And we're looking for the student to infer meaning by combining textual clues and personal knowledge or background understanding. So we want our students to kind of be using the text as a framework to synthesize and create their own answers. And we're really tapping into that higher order thinking at this point when we do this. So that's something that's really, really cool. And we see this a lot in social studies when we're asking kids to make predictions, for instance, or maybe infer how different groups of people might have interpreted a primary source at that time period. So as an example, why did the hostess sit still while a cobra was under the table in the dinner party? It's not going to directly tell the students that the reason why was because she knew that sitting still would make the cobra less anxious and maybe not attack her. But the student might combine that with their own knowledge of how animals act, and by using the text. So that's where the author and you really comes into play. And like I said, I think this is really important in social studies. Finally, we have the on my own questions. And this is going to be where we want our students to really make a connection to their own life. So this answer is usually entirely based on the reader's experience. It's usually like a final question in a series, in a questionnaire for social studies classrooms. So you're trying to connect the text to the reader's own life, their values, or their feelings. So as an example, what's a situation where someone has shown great courage? That would be kind of an example of a on my own question. The cool thing about on my own questions is that this can work really well with reluctant readers who may not connect emotionally, but they may struggle with comprehension of the reading. It can also be used as a starting prompt for a reading exercise. So students can start with the prompt of what is a situation where someone has shown great courage, talking about something from their life. And then you can ask it again after the reading, and maybe they'll actually answer it in a different way, which is really cool. So what you're probably wondering here is, does QAR work? Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Well, we have a lot of information that suggests that it does. So research shows that QAR works across grade levels and across abilities. Um, Researchers have found that it has increased comprehension and competence in elementary students. And even younger learners benefited when teachers used QAR during read alouds. So you can actually interject this into a longer reading just as an informal check for understanding, or you can use it formatively in something like a worksheet or a DBQ activity. Um, on top of that, what it's going to do is it's going to improve a student's ability to self-monitor and adapt their reading strategies. Now the kids are going to realize we're not just reading for the sake of reading, we're reading to answer questions, and they're going to adapt to that. Which, a lot of teachers, they kind of struggle with that. They're like, oh, if the kids are just reading for the answers, are they really reading? Well, it's a starting point, and at the very least. And also, it does help kids decode information, and it helps them kind of develop those critical skills for long-term literacy growth. So why does it work? Because it builds on metacognition, and it's using strategy-based comprehension skills. We're using a strategy, a scientific strategy. We're using it over and over again. And with that, as students start to align with the structure of this question and response format, they are going to start to develop the framework to help themselves read. They're going to be like, hey, I know that I'm expected to answer some questions. And they're going to oftentimes look at the questions before they start reading, which is actually a really great strategy, especially for students who get lost in bigger readings. All of this is going to facilitate deeper engagement with texts through inference and synthesis. We're having our students use multiple skills. And what's great about that is that we can also then pinpoint what skills they're struggling with and they need a little bit more help with. And that's why it really works. And then obviously it's going to benefit our students with disabilities and just all of our students, because we're getting that explicit scaffolding I just talked about for the students who struggle to kind of process more complex texts, which we deal with a lot once again in social studies. It's also going to align with the cognitive strategy instruction models for special education learners. So this works and fits within almost any special education strategy instruction framework. And it's going to support oral comprehension for students with decoding challenges by focusing on question structure. So our kids are going to be also, not only are they going to be reading these texts, but they're going to be reading questions and kind of learning how to build questions in their own heads, which is going to help them understand reading even deeper. All of this is going to help out our students. Um, and a couple of the researchers have described it as fitting well within cognitive strategy instruction just in general. So this could work and help out even your general education students. How do you implement it in your classroom? How do you make this work in the class? Just begin with short text and model QAR explicitly. You could literally create worksheets that go along with the texts, and you can just put the actual sentence types, the actual answer types, right next to the questions. It's to help you chart growth for your students. You're going to use think aloud, anchor charts. You can use student cue cards to kind of reinforce question types according to the strategy guide we have. And also, you're going to be moving away from teacher led to collaborative group instruction, and then eventually independent practice. So, this whole strategy works really well in an I do, we do, you do setting. You could start off by doing a big group read aloud where you can answer the first question and then ask students if they have other answers. Then you can set it to a we do where you have the kids working group work, and then you can finish it off with independent practice, where you have the students answering maybe those critical thinking questions on their own. It can also extend to different content area texts, obviously science, history and social studies, also, just ELA. So this can be used across all of your subjects to help build literacy um, within your classroom. And that's really, really important because continuity of strategy is a really important part when we're dealing with students who are often feeling dysregulated. As far as the implications for teaching, QAR supports a universal design for learning approach, which we all love. It can be used in guided readings. You can use it in small group special education instruction or special education inclusion rooms. Um, and it could be used in co-taught classrooms where teachers can kind of focus on different parts of the classroom, which is really helpful. You're going to be empowering your students to recognize question types, and then we're going to help them become more confident strategic readers through that and not just passive readers. So by getting them more activated by the questions, now they're kind of going on a hunt, on a journey through the reading that you gave them, as opposed to just reading for the sake of reading, which is often what students feel they're going through. Some of the future needs that we need to do more work on when it comes to QAR is kind of thinking about how QAR can be effectively adapted, especially for students who use things like AAC, multilingual learners, and Tier 3 interventions. Um, could it also be used to teach writing? Could we kind of take the system and adapt it to writing? I think so. I think you can absolutely do that through these kind of question cues. And you can probably build graphic organizers with QAR questions and have students turn those into essay responses, similar to like a racer format, but with a completely new formatting that students might actually be really excited to try out. So I think that this is something that could be used to help us out with writing instruction. So I hope you guys have learned a little bit of something about QAR. You're probably using it and don't even know it. So definitely think, more explicitly about it. My contact info, I'm Pete McCormick. My email is pjm298 at scarlettmail.rutgers.edu. I hope you will take my survey and kind of give me a grade on how well I did. And just once again, thanks for engaging with this strategy. And we have references listed right here that covered what our students, what the research says about this technique.